hindi natin may pagkaila na nakikita po namin yung pagbaba ng lupa, pagguho ng mga luha dahil sa dami ng tubig na naiipon po ay rumaragasa po yung tubig na galing sa bundok na kung saan sumasama na po yung kalupaan para siya po yung sanhi ng pagbaha sa ating mga kailugan.
Ang iniisip namin, kaligtasan ng lahat, kaya hanggat maaari, mapasunod natin ating mga kababayan nating pasaway.
Muli pa, ulit-ulit po sinasabi natin sa mga lugar kung saan may mga pag-ulan na naranasan itong mga nakaraang araw at sa mga darating pa, iba yung pag-iingat dahil posible pa rin yung mga tinatawag natin na rain-induced landslides at saka flash floods. Lalo na po, binibigyan din natin yung area ng Cordillera kung saan nakaranas sila ng mga paglindol. Medyo delikado na ho doon. Kapag may mga pag-ulan, posible magkaroon ng mga landslides.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
Cagayan did not escape the wrath of severe tropical storm Florita as it made its way through the province.
Aside from causing floods and toppling trees, Florita also damaged an entire cornfield a month before the harvest season. Laila Pangilinan is joining us live from Cagayan with the big story. Laila, what's the latest?
Gretchen, severe tropical storm Florita's heavy rains and strong winds hit the municipality of Baggao this afternoon. Deemed to travel any further, so we had to stop and look for cover to avoid landslides while on our way back to Tuguegarao City. Other motorists also took shelter inside the gym where we parked. Still in Baggao, a sidecar used to peddle food was knocked off because of the strong winds. Motorcycles were also seen hurrying to pass this flooded bridge as the water level rose fast. Baggao is one of the areas in Cagayan that is often in the watch list of the province's task force Lingkod Cagayan during typhoons due to flooding and landslides. Deforestation plays a major role in the erosion of the soil in the area.
So nakikita po din po namin bilang task force of Lingkod Cagayan, nakikita po namin yung pagbaba ng lupa, pagguho ng mga luha dahil sa dami ng tubig na naiipon po ay rumaragasa po yung tubig na galing sa bundok na kung saan sumasama na po yung kalupaan para siya po yung sanhi ng pagbaha sa ating mga kailugan.
Part of the 107 evacuees in the Salinong Evacuation Center belong to the same farmers who had no choice but to plant corn even on mountaintops. Their cornfields were devastated by severe tropical storm Florita, a month short before harvest season.
May remedyo, ma'am, pero mahirapan kami. Mabuti sana kung hindi natumba.
Tuguegarao also experienced heavy rains and winds since yesterday. The Baggao, Ipaga, Lubigan, and Nangalinan, all secondary bridges in Baggao, remain unpassable. In the municipality of Gonzaga, monitoring continues. Some of the residents of Purok 7, Barangay Kasitan, particularly senior citizens, women and children, already evacuated to their relatives' residence in the same barangay. In Barangay Pateng, still in Gonzaga, 3 families or 13 individuals are advised by the NDRRM officer to remain at the Gonzaga People's Gym because of the threat of the tropical storm. 396 individuals or 131 families have evacuated in Cagayan as of 12 noon. These include 193 residents from Baggao and 200 from Gonzaga. Some barangays like Zone 6 have no electricity after branches from this big tree toppled one of the barangay's electricity posts. The Baggao LGU was quick enough to respond and clear the roads from the aftermath of severe tropical storm Florita. Robbie, Gretchen, after a few hours of traveling, we are finally back in Tuguegarao, and it seems like a little bit more promising tonight than last night. The rains has already stopped, but you can see it's still a bit windy. And behind me is the rubber boat that the task force Ligtas Cagayan used in Peña Blanca because of the floods over there. That's the latest here in Tuguegarao. Robbie and Gretchen, back to you.
Laila, it's good to see that you and the crew are safe, but what is your sense of the readiness of the LGUs and the community?
Well, when it comes to the readiness, I can say that they are prepared. Well, we were up there in Baggao. The clearing operations were swift. One of the electric posts that was toppled down by a tree, it actually took them like 2 hours or an hour and a half for them to clear the road so that we and other vehicles can pass. Robbie.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We're seeing that there are no rains right now in your area. Would you say at this point that the worst is over?
I'd like to say that, Gretchen, but I wouldn't be so. I don't want to be too complacent because, as I think said up north, still in Ilocos Norte and Ilocos Sur, there will be a chance of rain. So here in Tuguegarao, I wouldn't want to say that the worst is over, but we should always say that we should be prepared.
In the meantime, Laila, kamusta ang mga evacuees?
The evacuees dun po sa pinuntahan natin, Robbie, specifically in Baggao, okay naman sila. They were served with food pagkatapos yung MSWD natin when we were still on standby because of the heavy rains and strong winds in that gym. Doon din sila naglo-load ng kanilang mga relief packs. There are food packs that came from DSWD. And nakikita naman natin that the municipality of Baggao is serving well their constituents in terms of relief packs. One of their leaders told us that these food packs will be given to the typhoon-affected residents of Baggao. Yun nga lang, on that part, when dun sa isang evacuation center, hindi muna nila narating at that time because tumaas yung tubig. So there's this bridge that you have to pass, the one that you saw on the video, which the single motorcycles are hurrying kasi tumataas yung tubig. But then again, they said that once the water has subsided, they will go and proceed to distribute their relief packs over there, Robbie.
Well, we hope things get better and better from here on. Maraming salamat. Laila Panghilinan reporting to us live from Cagayan. Right after the break, we'll get the latest on the extent of damage brought by severe tropical storm Florita straight from the NDRRMC. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Si Bagyong Florita as of 5 p.m. Makikita nga natin sa ating latest satellite images. So ito yung Bagyong Florita, tapos ito yung southwest monsoon na siyang nakaka-apekto particular na nga dito sa may bahagi ng western section ng Luzon. So kung titingnan pa natin, ito yung ating radar images mula sa Apari. At makikita nga ho natin kaninang bandang alas 10:30. So makikita nyo ito yung sentro ng bagyo. Bandang 10:30, ito ay naglandfall sa Makunakon. At mapansin nyo halos parang nabasag yung bagyo. So yun yung expect na natin since dumaan ito or dumadaan ito dun sa rugged terrain ng Cordillera. Kaya in-expect natin na medyo humina ito. As of 4 p.m., Bagyong Florita ay nasa Baggao, Apayao. At ito ay may lakas na umabot ng 100 kilometers per hour malapit sa gitna. At pagbugso naman na nasa 165 kilometers per hour. Kaya po nung binanggit ko, medyo humihina po itong bagyo si Florita dahil ito ay kumikilos na dito sa may bahagi ng Cordillera. So ito ay kumikilos pa northwestward sa bilis naman na 20 kilometers per hour. Ito yung ating latest as of 5 p.m. Sa 5 p.m. bulletin. So ito yung may mga tropical cyclone wind signal. Mapansin ninyo, halos yung area ng Ilocos Norte at Cagayan na may signal number 3. Tapos dito sa may bagay ng Ilocos Sur, Apura, Kalinga, Mountain Province, Baggao, Isabela, may signal number 2. Signal number 1 dito sa nalalabing bahagi ng area ng Cordillera at sa Aurora. To be specific, ang signal number 1 at signal number 3 natin nakataas sa Ilocos Norte, sa Baggao, southern portion of Babuyan Islands at sa mainland Cagayan. Habang ang signal number 2 ay nakataso sa Ifugao, Mountain Province, Kalinga, Isabela, Ilocos Sur at nalabing bahagi ng Babuyan Islands. Signal number 1 naman sa La Union, sa silangang bahagi ng Pangasinan, sa Benguet, Nueva Vizcaya, dito sa Quirino, sa hilagang bahagi ng Nueva Ecija, at hilaga at gitnang bahagi ng Aurora. So ipinakita ko sa inyong mapa kanina, ito po yung may mga lugar na kung saan nakataas yung tropical cyclone wind signal. Habang kumikilos pa hilagang kanluran, yung bagyong si Florita, in-expect natin na unti-unti nang bababa itong mga kung saan nakataas yung iba't ibang mga tropical cyclone wind signal kasi papalayo na ito ng aming bansa.
Here on One News. Heavy rain and strong winds were seen across the country due to severe tropical storm Florita. Marian Enriquez with the report.
Just hours after making landfall in Isabela, severe tropical storm Florita has already caused flooding and damage in several parts of the country. In Ginubatan, Albay, one of the roads seemingly looked like a river due to the water flowing in the area. While some chose to power their way through the flood, many motorists decide to stop first and wait for the water to subside. According to the netizen who uploaded this video, this is the first time they experienced flooding like this since Typhoon Ulysses back in 2020. Flood waters also entered many houses in Barangay Tula-Tula in Legazpi City. This has always been a problem of many residents as heavy rain could easily cause a river near their barangay to overflow. Severe flooding could also be seen in several provinces up north as signal numbers 3 and 2 have been raised in these areas. Over in Lawag City, heavy traffic could be seen in the area due to flooding. Water also appears to have entered plenty of homes in the province. This was also the case in Batac City, Ilocos Norte, as 8 villages were flooded due to the overflow of water in Kiawit River. Meanwhile, in the town of San Mariano in Isabela, students had no choice but to bathe a nearby river after classes were suspended. Unfortunately, the boat that would normally help them get across was destroyed during the storm. Several parts of Metro Manila likewise experienced flash floods due to the heavy rain and strong winds brought by Florita. Students from Fortune Elementary School in Marikina had to brave the rain on the second day of face-to-face classes. The government has since decided to suspend government work and classes in public schools in all levels in NCR, Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, Bulacan, Zambales, and Bataan from August 23 to 24. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
The second day of classes and many of our students have heard their favorite 2 words, walang pasok. Oo, meron din naman na dismaya in Valenzuela in particular who said, oo, may pasok kayo.
Yeah, but what a way to start the school year, no? Parang talagang kawawa yung mga tao, lalong-lalo na, as we saw in that situation. We're talking about rooms, we're talking about tables and chairs. In that particular case that we saw, bridges man lang and roads impassable for the students.
And kids had to go to school before class suspensions were called.
But hopefully they're getting, they can expect a lot of help, a lot of support. Here to give us the latest on the situation of provinces affected by severe tropical storm Florita, we have with us NDRRMC spokesperson Mark Timbal. Welcome to the big story, Mr. Timbal.
Sir Robbie, Ma'am Gretchen, good evening po, and to all our listeners and viewers, good evening.
Sir, before anything else, what can our people expect in the coming days? Is Gretch asked earlier, is the worst over, or are we bracing for more rains?
With the storm actually leaving the Philippine area of responsibility tomorrow, some parts of Luzon will be expecting fairer weather, but because of the habagat, sir, there would still be occasional strong rains in a lot of areas.
Sir, your assessment on how our LGUs responded to the typhoon, were we prepared? Were we prepared enough?
What we've seen so far is that when the NDRRMC called an emergency meeting last Sunday, when the low pressure area became Storm Florita, all local government unit disaster managers were already on board to start the preparations. What we're seeing is that they have been doing their job quickly, as well as in the area of the provision of assistance for the affected families. What we have right now is the report coming from our counterparts in Cagayan, where we have received information that more than 500 persons have evacuated and are now staying in evacuation centers. We have 579 persons that had been affected coming from 14 barangays in Cagayan Valley region, and more than 390 persons are staying in evacuation centers, with a good number of persons staying outside evacuation centers, meaning to say they evacuated but are staying with their relatives in safer areas. They have received assistance coming from the local government units, all this evacuated population. At the NDRRMC level, we have more than 800 million pesos worth of funds ready for support to the local government. And we have more than 480,000 units of family food packs for that purpose as well.
Mr. Timbal, how are the public utilities holding up? Water, electricity, communications for that matter, and do we have access to all the barangays?
So, as of this time, we don't have any report of areas that have been isolated because of the storm, and all utilities except power lines are still functional, especially in the area of Cagayan. The power interruptions are usually part of the precautionary measures being implemented by the local power cooperatives to make sure that if in case something happens with the lines, no one will get electrocuted during the height of the storm.
When we see videos and images of all of these floods, especially in the north, we are reminded by what happened in 2020, Bagyong Ulysses, and how it had its worst flooding in 40 years. What adjustments did we make for that to not happen again? And kamusta yung sitwasyon po sa Magat Dam?
Opo, isa po sa mga naging concern talaga nung panahon na yun, no, kay Ulysses, ay yung pong malakihang pagbaha na naganap, at naging issue po yung paglalabas po ng tubig ng Magat Dam. Isa po sa mga adjustment na ginawa natin sa NDRRMC ay muli pong binuhay ang mga dam safety committees sa iba't ibang mga rehiyon na nakakasakop po ng mga dams. In this case po, ang ginagawa po ngayon in view of Florita, nagkaroon po ng maagap na pagbibigay abiso ang ating Magat Dam Management Authorities doon po sa ating mga local government units downstream. Dahil tayo po ay nasa period of water release, at para makontrol po yung atas ng tubig doon sa dam. So far, wala naman pong nangyari na parang gulatang ngayon na nagkaroon ng pagbaha. Expected po at this time that since we're in the middle of the La Nina season and the rainy season, there will be increased risk for flooding in a lot of low-lying areas. Even in the areas that had been affected by the Abra earthquake previously, there's a heightened risk for landslides and flash flooding, and it had been provided, the warning has been provided to the local government units in advance to make the necessary preparations.
Mr. Timbal, gaya nga po na sabi natin, napapag-usapan din namin kanina, it's the start of classes, start of school for our children. Kamusta po ang facilities for our school children, not just in terms of damage, but even potentially schools, as we know, being used as evacuation centers. How has this affected classes?
Tama po kayo dyan, Sir Robbie. Although ang thrust po ngayon ng ating pamahalaan ay i-minimize po ang paggamit ng mga evacuation center, ng mga schools as evacuation centers. It was just that during the time of the pandemic that since there's no school activity po, ay naging active ulit siya sa as evacuation facility. What the government has done is to build more than 100 dedicated evacuation centers across the country for the purpose of being the emergency shelter po ng mga kababayan po natin. As of this time po, since in a lot of areas po dyan sa mga affected regions, nagkaroon po ng suspension of classes, it's still within the prerogative of the local government unit to use all facilities available. Although ang priority po talaga na gamitin ay yung mga multipurpose halls, gymnasium, etc. ng ating LGU. Kapag available naman po ang school, pwede naman po nilang gamitin, but as a last resort, kumbaga po. And if the evacuation center is also available, hindi po ginawang quarantine facility, pwede po nila to gamitin kaagad. All schools naman po, especially those that had been affected by the Abra earthquake previously, are undergoing assessment. And if the schools have not been deemed as safe para po dun sa mga learners po natin, the DepEd, in coordination with other government agencies, have set up temporary learning facilities for that purpose.
Okay, Mr. Timbal, maraming salamat po. Mark Timbal, spokesperson for the NDRRMC. More stories after the break. Keep it here on One News.
Islands, sa Cordillera, sa Ilocos Region, Zambales at Bataan. So mga lugar ho na yan, asahan pa rin yung mga malalakas na mga pagulan hanggang mga torrential level. Moderate to heavy with the times intense naman dito sa Kamaynilaan. So dito sa Kamaynilaan, lalo na sa mga umuwi pa, expect pa rin ho natin yung mga malalakas na mga pagulan. Sa Isabela, Tarlac, Pampanga, Cavite, lalabing bahagi ng Cagayan Valley. Habang light to moderate with the times heavy rains naman sa lalabing bahagi ng Central Luzon at Calabarzon. So yan ang inaasahan natin ngayong gabi. Bukas naman, anong ating nakikita, posible po may mga pag-ulan pa rin bukas sa Ilocos Region, sa Benguet at sa Abra. Samantala, light to moderate with times heavy rain naman sa nalalabing bahagi ng Cordillera, Zambales at Bataan. So mapapansin ho ninyo habang papalayo na nga yung bagyo, even yung axis ng southwest monsoon ay concentrated na lamang sa
You're still watching the big story here on One News. A severe tropical storm made landfall over Maconacon, Isabela earlier today. To give us updates on the situation in the province, Isabela Governor Rodolfo Albano III is joining us on the line. Governor Albano, welcome to the big story.
Yes, good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen. Good evening. Good evening to everyone.
Good evening po, and good that you could be with us. We know it's very busy time for you. We've been getting some updates from our people on the ground as well as from the NDRRMC, but we'd like to get a sense also of the impact on agriculture. Cagayan Valley being so important as a food bowl, especially for the grains, particularly for corn. We're 1 month away from harvest from a harvest cycle in Cagayan. What is your assessment, sir, of the storm's impact on agriculture in your region?
So I have to assess it tomorrow, because as I've seen, I've been going around the northern part of the province, which is affected by this Florita. I'm sorry, parang nag-e-echo yung voice ko sa inyo.
Malinaw naman po kayo dito. Malinaw kayo on our end.
Yeah, sorry, pero nag-e-echo kasi yung voice ko pabalik. Anyway, I've been attending it, there's very minimal damage as of now for our crops, especially corn. Hello?
Sige lang po. We can hear you, sir.
Yes, okay. Especially corn, As with regard to palay naman, they're just planting now. The planting season is this September, So there's not much damage to our palay crops. Okay.
Okay. So, but what would you say is your biggest need at this point, Governor?
Actually, it's Cagayan that's heavily damaged, that was heavily hit by the typhoon. We in the northern part of Isabela, we were hit by the typhoon, but not that much. But Maconacon, I don't know about Maconacon because the landfall was there. It started there in Maconacon, Bilacan, and Palanan, and they evacuated already about 150 families, equivalent to 380 individuals. The impact of the typhoon here in northern Isabela, I don't know if we'll feel it tomorrow. Okay?
Sir, can you give us, on a final note, an overview of the situation there when it comes to our evacuation centers, as well as yung mga binabantayan po natin ng mga river, yung Cagayan at yung Pinakawan River?
Yeah. Yung Cagayan River and Pinakawan River, ang heavily affected, yung northern part ng Isabela, but toward Cagayan already. I've heard some flooding in Baggao but here in my area, in northern Isabela, the overflow bridges have already overflown, but there's no damage to our crops. The flood waters are rising, but in a very slow pace here in northern Isabela. But we've been evacuating people along the river banks na. And we've been giving relief goods, and especially PAGCOR has already sent to us 54,000 relief packs.
Meron po ba tayong estimate, Governor, ng mga tao na nasa evacuation center? How many families?
No, in Maconacon, there's about 150 families, which is equivalent to 380 individuals. In the Bilacan, there's one barangay there, Barangay Dimapula. They've already evacuated a lot of people there. But I can't give you an estimate of how many people were evacuated in the Bilacan, because we're just coordinating with them through phone patch. Sometimes the signals that go through the Bilacan, because that's our coastal areas. Hello.
All right, maraming salamat po, Governor. It's good to hear that things are not as bad in Isabela, and we hope things continue on that way, and we won't keep you any longer. Maraming salamat, Isabela Governor Rodolfo Albano III.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. Ako po si Gretchen Ho. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News. All sides, all the time.